No one wanted to mate with disabled alien girl until one human said, "Will you mate with me?" On the alien world of Thyra, beauty and strength were law. Every creature, every living thing measured worth by perfection. Those with straight limbs, bright, symmetrical bioluminescent markings, and strong endurance were admired. Those who were different quietly disappeared into the shadows. They were not cruel about it. Tyra's society simply accepted it as fact. Lyra was born different. Her left limb had never fully grown, leaving her slightly lopsided. Her glowing patterns pulsed unevenly across her skin, like an unfinished painting. She could run, she could climb, she could work, yet in the eyes of her society she was incomplete. And in Thyra, incomplete meant unwanted. Even as a child, Lyra understood the invisible rules. She watched other young aliens parade their physical perfection during mating ceremonies. They smiled, they danced, they shimmered like stars, and they were chosen. She would watch, standing quietly at the edge, unnoticed and unseen. And that was exactly how she was meant to be. Yet Lyra was not bitter. Her mind, sharp and curious, kept her company. She memorized the constellations in the sky, the way the wind shaped the grasses, and the hidden patterns in the forests. She dreamed of worlds beyond her own, imagining places where strength was measured by mind, by heart, by courage rather than symmetry. When the humans arrived, Lyra had no idea what to expect. They were strange creatures, clumsy and unremarkable compared to Thyra's elites, but there was a spark in their eyes, a light she had never seen among her own kind. Humans, she had learned from the visiting scholars, had survived on intelligence, creativity, and cooperation, rather than raw physical perfection. Her role was minor. Assigned as a cultural assistant, she helped translate rituals, guide the humans, and explain customs. Most Tyrans overlooked her completely, so she went about her work quietly, avoiding attention. But the human named Evan did not overlook her. Evan had a limp. One of his legs did not function fully, a reminder of a life filled with hardships and accidents. Lyra had expected him to look down on her, or at least avoid her. Instead, he met her eyes as if he could see something invisible to everyone else, something valuable. Their first conversation was awkward but genuine. "Why do you never join the ceremonies?" he asked one afternoon. "I am not suitable," Lyra replied simply. "I am not chosen." "Not chosen?" he repeated, frowning. "Why not?" She shrugged. "I am different. Others, they do not see me. They only see what I am not." Evan considered this. On Earth, he explained, people with differences were not excluded. They were scientists, artists, friends, leaders. A limp, a scar, or even missing limbs did not make someone unworthy. Lyra did not fully understand it. She had never experienced kindness without expectation, without judgment. She was cautious. "You are kind to say that, but kindness does not change who I am here." He smiled softly. "Maybe not, but it changes how I see you." For a moment, Lyra felt warmth she had not known. She wanted to believe him, to hope that maybe her worth was more than the numbers and patterns that defined her world. Days passed. Lyra guided Evan through ceremonies, rituals, and cultural norms. She explained the subtle dances, the ways that Thyrans displayed status, and the patterns in their glowing skin. He stumbled over words, made mistakes, yet she helped him patiently. And in return, he helped her. He adjusted tools and workstations so she could manage her tasks more easily. He listened when she spoke, asking questions that showed he really wanted to understand. Slowly, a friendship formed, quiet, careful, but powerful. The Thyrans noticed. Whispers followed them wherever they went. "Why does he spend time with her?" some asked. The answer was simple. He didn't care about her status. She was not a project or a curiosity to him. He treated her as an equal, which in itself was revolutionary on Thyra. But Lyra remained wary. She had learned not to hope for attention, not to expect care, not to believe that anyone could see her fully. And yet with Evan there was a strange sense of safety, a feeling that she could be herself without being judged. The next mating ceremony approached, a formal event where every young Theron presented themselves in hopes of being chosen. Lyra did not attend. She stayed in the shadows, watching from afar as others paraded their perfect bodies and glowing patterns. Every choice, every selection reinforced the rule: she was invisible. Even from the edges of the crowd she could see Evan. He stood quietly, not participating in the pomp or the display, yet clearly watching the rituals. His eyes occasionally met hers, and each time she felt a flicker of something she had not experienced before: recognition. The elders moved among the participants, noting those worthy, advising pairings, and whispering praises. Lyra felt the familiar weight of invisibility settle around her chest, but something was different this time. Evan's gaze did not flinch. It did not look away. It held her in a way that made her feel seen. Later, alone in her quarters, Lyra replayed the day over and over. She remembered the shimmer of the ceremonial lights, the laughter of the chosen, the empty feeling in her chest. And she remembered Evan's quiet attention, steady and patient, a tiny anchor in a sea of judgment. She wondered what it would be like to be chosen, to be seen as valuable not for what she could produce or how perfect she looked, but simply for who she was. The thought was almost frightening. Could someone truly see past the difference, the imperfection, the disability? Could they care without expectation? That night she sat by a small window watching the twin moons rise over Thyra's plains. The air shimmered with bioluminescent dust, tiny floating lights that reflected the world's beauty even in shadow. She allowed herself for the first time a small measure of hope. Perhaps there was a place for her, not as a shadow or a footnote, but as someone whole, someone recognized. Evan knocked softly and entered. He carried a small device, a human tool she did not understand yet, but his presence was comforting. "I thought you might like to see this," he said. He handed her the device, and as they looked at it together, she felt something warm in her chest, a connection she had never allowed herself before. For the first time, Lyra felt that maybe being different was not a curse, not a sentence. Perhaps it was simply a challenge, a chance to show that worth is more than symmetry or strength. And though she did not yet know it, this small bond, this simple act of kindness and recognition, was the beginning of something that could change everything, not just for Lyra, but for the world of Thyra. The next day would bring new challenges, new whispers, and new opportunities, but for now, in the quiet of her room, she allowed herself to dream. Perhaps there was someone who could see her fully. Perhaps there was someone who could choose her, not for what she was not, but for what she was. And somewhere deep in her heart, she knew the first human to truly notice her, Evan, would be part of that story. The day after the mating ceremony, Lyra woke early. The soft violet light of Thyra's twin suns bathed the plains in a quiet glow. Even though she had spent years feeling invisible, something about yesterday lingered in her mind. Evan's attention, his quiet look, the way he seemed to see her for the first time. She tried to dismiss it. After all, nothing had really changed. Thyra's society would still ignore her, and no one would step forward to choose her. Still, she felt lighter than usual, as if a small thread of hope had been tied inside her chest. Evan arrived shortly after sunrise, carrying a bundle of equipment. "Good morning, Lyra," he said. "I have some work to do, but I thought you might want to see this first." She raised an eyebrow. "See what?" He smiled, unwrapping the bundle to reveal tools and gadgets she had never used before. They were simple for him, complicated for her, a strange mix of human engineering and Thyra technology. "It's a device to help measure the patterns in your glow," he explained. "I thought you might find it interesting." Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "Interesting." "Yes." She reached for it carefully, her uneven limb making her movements slower, more deliberate. She expected him to glance at her disability, as everyone else did, but he didn't. His eyes stayed on hers. They spent the morning working together. Evan showed her how to calibrate the device, how to record readings, and how to interpret the data. She asked questions, carefully phrasing each one, and he answered patiently. For hours, the rest of the world disappeared. There was only them, and the strange bond forming between them. At one point she paused, resting her hand on the table. "You don't treat me as if I am less," she said quietly. "You do not look at my limb and think I am defective." Evan leaned back, considering her words. "On Earth, people like me know what it is to be judged for what they cannot do," he said. "I've had my own struggles. That's why I see you. I see who you are, not what you are missing." Lyra felt her throat tighten. She had never been seen like this. Never before had someone noticed her mind, her thoughts, her heart, instead of her body. A small warmth spread through her chest, confusing her. She was used to isolation, to silence, to being ignored. And yet here was someone who wanted to be near her, to learn from her, to share moments with her. Thank you," she whispered. "You don't need to thank me," he replied. "I enjoy your company." The day passed quickly. They moved to the open plains to test the device, recording the soft glow of the grasses and the stars above. Lyra spoke of constellations, of old legends, and Evan listened, fascinated. He asked questions, not to correct her or challenge her, but to understand. By evening, they returned to the small settlement. The other Thyrans noticed them walking together, and whispers began again. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Why would a human spend so much time with one who was considered unworthy? Others watched in quiet curiosity, intrigued by the unusual pair. Lyra ignored the whispers, but her heart beat faster than usual. For the first time, she did not feel ashamed of herself. She felt... Over the next few days, their friendship deepened. Evan asked her about her past, her studies, her dreams. Lyra told him of the nights she had spent watching the stars, learning their names, imagining other worlds. He shared stories of Earth, of humans who overcame challenges, of people who found meaning beyond appearance. One afternoon, as they rested on a hill overlooking the plains, Lyra hesitated before speaking. "Do you not see me as I am supposed to be?" she asked. Evan shook his head. "I see you as you are," he said simply. "That is enough for me." Her chest tightened. She had never known anyone to feel that way. Even the few close friends she had as a child never stayed long. They always drifted away, drawn to the perfect or the strong. But Evan, he stayed. He noticed her patterns, her brilliance, her mind. He treated her as if she mattered, not as someone to be fixed, not as a project, not as a curiosity. Days turned into weeks. They explored the forests, mapped the rivers, and measured the light patterns together. Lyra taught him how to read the shift in glow of Thyra's plants and skies, while he helped her manipulate tools she had struggled with before. Their bond was growing, silent and unspoken, yet powerful, and still the whispers persisted. "Why does he spend time with her?" the others asked. "Does he not see her defect?" One day, as they worked near a grove of glowing trees, a group of young Thyrans approached. They were curious, perhaps even a little envious. "You spend a lot of time together," one said. "Do you really think a human understands what we value?" Evan looked at them calmly. "I don't follow your rules," he said. "I see what I see, and what I see is someone intelligent, strong, and kind. That is what matters to me." The young Thyrans exchanged glances, uncertain how to respond. Lyra felt a surge of pride. For the first time, someone outside of herself had spoken her worth aloud in front of others. That evening, as the twin suns sank below the horizon, Lyra and Evan sat side by side on a quiet hill. The sky was filled with stars, each one flickering softly. "Do you think anyone else will ever understand?" Lyra asked. "Maybe," Evan said. "But it's not all right." "But it doesn't matter if they do. I understand, and that is enough for now." She turned to him, her glowing patterns uneven in the dim light. "You really mean that?" "I do," he said, looking at her steadily. "I mean every word." For the first time in her life, Lyra felt a strange mixture of hope and fear. Hope because someone truly saw her. Fear because she had spent so long believing she was invisible. Could she trust this feeling? Could she allow herself to be seen fully? The next day, a new ceremony was announced. It was smaller than the main mating event, a chance for Thyrans to pair in research and cultural exchange. Lyra did not plan to participate. She had learned that she would never be chosen. But as she prepared to stay in the shadows, she noticed Evan moving toward the ceremony grounds. His presence, steady and unwavering, made her heart beat faster than she expected. She followed him at a distance, curious despite herself. The ceremony began with the usual displays. Thyrans moved gracefully, their bioluminescent patterns glowing bright as they demonstrated their strength and agility. Others whispered about them, praising their perfection. Lyra felt the familiar weight of exclusion pressing down, but she also felt a strange courage building inside her. Evan did not participate in the display. He simply observed, standing quietly as others performed. And then, several times, his eyes found hers. There was no judgment there, only recognition. Only understanding. By the end of the day, Lyra realized something profound. She had never felt truly seen by anyone, and yet in Evan's gaze, she felt whole. Perhaps it was not perfection that mattered, but attention. Perhaps it was not strength that mattered, but connection. As she returned to her quarters that night, she allowed herself a small smile. For the first time, she believed that she could matter, that she could be recognized not for what she lacked, but for who she was. And somewhere deep inside, she felt the first stirrings of a dream that someone might one day choose her, not for status or rules, but simply because she was Lyra. And Evan, she thought of him quiet and steady, and wondered what he truly saw. For the first time, the shadow that had followed her all her life felt lighter. For the first time, the invisible thread of hope was no longer a fragile line. It was a rope, stretching toward a future she had never imagined. The next step, the next choice, would come soon, and Lyra, for the first time, felt ready to face it. The day of the smaller mating ceremony arrived. Lyra stood at the edge of the ceremonial grounds, her uneven limb making her movement slower, her heart pounding. She had no intention of participating. It was the same as always. She would remain invisible, ignored, unnoticed. That was her place. The gathering began with music from bioluminescent instruments, soft and strange, echoing across the plains. Thyrans moved with grace, displaying their strength in glowing patterns in ways that emphasized perfection. Lyra watched quietly, her chest tight. The familiar feeling of invisibility pressed against her, heavy and relentless. Evan arrived shortly after, moving carefully among the participants. He did not take part in the display, as he did not possess the perfection Thyra demanded. He simply stood among the observers, his eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on her. At first, Lyra tried to look away, to shrink into herself as she always did, but Evan's gaze found her repeatedly. There was no mockery, no curiosity, no pity, only calm, steady recognition. For a moment, she felt a strange courage grow inside her. The ceremony continued. Pairs were formed, chosen by performance, by symmetry, by the intricate dances that demonstrated strength, bending it. Lyra's eyes followed each choice, her chest tightening as she felt the invisible barrier of her status closing in once more. And then, a group of Thyran elders approached Evan. They were the most influential of the society, tall and glowing with patterns that marked them as perfect and wise. "Human," one elder said, his voice like soft thunder, "do you understand what is required here? This is not a place for imperfections." Evan nodded calmly. "I understand your rules," he said. "But I do not follow them. I choose based on what I see, not what is expected." The elders exchanged uncertain glances. It was unusual, shocking even, for anyone to challenge their traditions, much less a human. One of them, the oldest and most respected, stepped closer. "And who, then, do you see?" Evan turned, his eyes locking onto Lyra's. His voice was quiet, but firm. "I see Lyra." A hush fell over the crowd, not because she was being chosen, but because no one expected it. No one had ever considered Lyra before. In all her life, she had never been seen in such a public, undeniable way. Her heart raced, her chest tight with disbelief. I am not," Lyra began, her voice small, unsure. "You are seen," Evan said, stepping closer. "Not for what you are missing, not for what you cannot do, but for who you are." Some whispered among themselves. The younger Thyrans watched in silent fascination. No one had ever questioned the rules so openly. The very foundation of Thyra's society, the belief that worth was measured by perfection, was being challenged before their eyes. Lyra's mind raced. Could this be real? Could someone truly choose her, not because they were obliged, not because of a rule, but because they wanted to? She had never imagined such a thing. All her life she had been invisible, a shadow at the edge of every gathering, and now, someone was asking her to step into the light. Why me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Evan smiled, gentle and steady. "Because you are intelligent, kind, and brave. Because you make me feel understood. That is what matters to me." The words struck her like sunlight through clouds. She wanted to look away, to deny it, to retreat to the shadows where she belonged. But she could not. Something inside her stirred, hope, courage, and a feeling she had never allowed herself to feel. Possibility. The crowd shifted, murmuring. Some were curious, some confused, some skeptical. "A human chooses someone considered unworthy?" whispered one young Thyran. "Yes," Evan replied quietly, but with a strength that carried across the crowd. "I choose based on heart, not pattern. I choose Lyra." Lyra's chest tightened further. Her mind raced with fear. What would this mean for her? For her life? For the world she had always known? She had never questioned the rules before. Now she was being asked to step outside them entirely. And yet, there was a strange warmth in her chest, a thread of courage that grew stronger with each passing moment. For the first time, she felt the possibility of being more than invisible. She could choose to be seen, she could choose to matter. She took a step forward, then another, and finally, she stood before Evan, her uneven limbs steadying beneath her. The crowd fell silent, waiting. Evan extended his hand, not as a gesture of pity, but as a gesture of partnership. "Will you step forward with me?" he asked. Lyra's throat tightened. The words echoed in her mind. "Step forward, be seen. I have my sister asked me, choose." She felt the weight of her lifetime of isolation pressing down, but she also felt the strength Evan had placed before her. A strength not in muscles, not in glow, but in trust and recognition. Slowly she reached out and took his hand. The crowd held its breath. Some elders shifted uncomfortably, their rules challenged, their expectations broken. Others, younger and curious, leaned forward watching the impossible unfold. "You choose me?" she asked, her voice small. "I do," Evan said, steady and unwavering. "I see you as you are. That is enough for me." The words rang in the air like a quiet declaration. Lyra felt tears prick at her eyes, though she refused to let them fall. She had never known anyone to truly choose her, and now she realized something profound. Choice was not about obligation or expectation. It was about recognition, about seeing someone fully and asking them to walk with you anyway. The ceremony ended without further displays. Lyra and Evan stood together, hand in hand, a symbol of something new. The crowd dispersed slowly, whispers trailing behind them. Some were angry, some confused, some intrigued. But all had witnessed something extraordinary. The rules could be questioned, and hearts could be recognized beyond perfection. Afterward, they walked to a quiet grove outside the settlement. Lyra's chest still beat rapidly, but a strange calm began to settle over her. I don't know what comes next," she said. "Neither do I," Evan replied. "But we can find out together." For the first time, Lyra felt a sense of partnership she had never known. She had spent her life alone, invisible to the very society that surrounded her. And now, someone saw her, truly saw her, not as a defect, not as someone to pity, not as a shadow, but as a person worthy of choice and recognition. The days that followed were not without challenge. Whispers persisted. Some Thyrans questioned her presence at the settlement, their eyes filled with disbelief. Why does the human choose her, they asked. She is not worthy. She cannot be. Lyra ignored them, focusing on the quiet strength Evan offered. Together they explored the plains, measured the stars, and learned from each other. Slowly, the younger Thyrans began to notice something new. Value was not always visible, and strength was not always measured by glow or symmetry. One evening, as the twin suns set and the sky shimmered with the first stars, Lyra realized something profound. She had lived her life in the shadows, believing she was unworthy. But now, for the first time, she felt the possibility of standing in the light. She had someone who chose her, not for what she lacked, but for who she was. And that choice, that simple, courageous choice, had the power to change everything. She looked at Evan standing beside her, calm and steady. "Do you really see me?" she asked. "I do," he said. "Completely. And I will keep seeing you no matter what the world says." For the first time, Lyra understood the meaning of true recognition. It was not about rules or perfection. It was about heart, courage, and the willingness to see someone fully and accept them. The world of Thyra was beginning to change, slowly but surely. And at the center of it all, Lyra stood, not as a shadow, not as a defect, but as someone who had been chosen, someone who could finally choose for herself. The next step would be the hardest, facing the full weight of society's rules, the elders' judgments, and the expectations of the world. But for the first time, she felt ready. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer alone. And for the first time, she believed in the possibility of a future defined by choice, not by imperfection. The morning sun rose slowly over the plains of Thyra, casting long shadows across the settlement. Lyra stood on the hill near the edge of the forest, her uneven limb planted firmly on the ground, and looked out at the world that had always ignored her. She no longer felt invisible. For the first time, she understood that being different was not a weakness, and being chosen by Evan had shown her a new kind of strength. Evan arrived, carrying a small device he had been working on. He approached her quietly, a smile on his face that made her chest feel light. "Are you ready?" he asked. Lyra nodded, though her heart raced. Today was not a ceremony of display or judgment. Today was about choice, her choice. She had been offered a future she never imagined, and she had to decide how to step into it. They walked together to the settlement, hand in hand. The younger Thyrans watched them, curious and uncertain. Some of the elders were present, their glowing patterns bright and commanding, ready to witness what they expected would be a scandal, or at least an unusual spectacle. When the gathering began, silence filled the air. Lyra felt all the eyes on her, but she did not shrink. She stood tall, not perfect, not symmetrical, but strong in her own way. She felt the warmth of Evan's hand, steady and supportive, and it gave her courage. The head elder approached, his voice deep and slow. "Human and Thyran, what is your intent here?" he asked. Evan spoke first. "I see Lyra as a partner, as someone to walk beside, not because of rules, not because of perfection, but because of who she is." The crowd murmured. Lyra could feel the tension in the air. This was unprecedented. No Thyran had ever been chosen outside the strict bounds of beauty and physical ability. And yet Evan's words held something stronger than tradition. They held truth. The elder turned to Lyra. "And you, Lyra, will you accept this choice?" Lyra took a deep breath. Her mind went back to all the years she had spent in the shadows, watching others be chosen, feeling invisible, feeling less. But she also remembered Evan's kindness, his patience, and the way he had treated her as a person rather than a defect. She remembered the days they had worked together, explored the forests, studied the stars, and learned from one another. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I accept." The words echoed across the grounds. Some Thyrans gasped, some whispered, some stared in disbelief. But others, particularly the younger ones, leaned forward, watching with awe. A new possibility had arrived, a future where worth was measured not only by perfection but by heart, courage, and understanding. Evan smiled, gently squeezing her hand. "Then we step forward together," he said. And together they moved into the open. Lyra's uneven limb made her step slower, but she walked confidently, her head held high. She felt seen, fully, completely, and without judgment. She had chosen herself as much as she had accepted his choice. The elders watched closely. Some were skeptical, but even they could not deny the quiet power in Lyra's presence. There was something new in her eyes, something that had never been there before, a mixture of courage, acceptance, and determination. As the ceremony ended, the younger Thyrans began to approach Lyra and Evan. They asked questions, they offered congratulations, and some even admitted they had never considered that worth could exist beyond physical perfection. Slowly, the whispers changed from doubt to curiosity. A seed had been planted. In the following days, life on Thyra began to shift. Lyra and Evan worked together on projects exploring ways to adapt technology and cultural practices to include everyone, not just the perfect. They studied stars, mapped forests, and helped younger Thyrans discover that differences could be strengths. Lyra became a symbol, not of defiance, but of possibility. She had been ignored all her life, but now she had a voice, and she used it with quiet confidence. One evening, as the twin suns set and painted the sky with soft colors, Lyra and Evan sat together on their favorite hill. The wind carried the gentle hum of the settlement below, and the bioluminescent plants flickered softly. Lyra leaned against him, feeling the warmth of connection she had never known before. "Do you think they will ever fully accept this?" she asked, glancing at the distant settlement. Evan shook his head, smiling. "Perhaps not immediately. Change is slow, but they will see, in time, that strength is not only what glows on the outside, it is what is inside." Lyra nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. For the first time, she believed it. She was no longer bound by rules she had never made. She was not invisible. She was chosen not because she was perfect, but because she was herself, and that was enough. Days turned into weeks. Lyra and Evan continued their work together. They modified tools for those with physical differences, created educational programs for younger Thyrans, and shared stories of Earth and Thyra to show the value of cooperation and understanding. Slowly, the society began to adapt, questioning old beliefs and traditions that had excluded so many. One day, a young Thyran approached Lyra with a small smile. "I never thought I could do this," the youth said, holding up a simple device they had struggled to use before. "But you helped me." "Thank you." Lyra's chest swelled with pride. She remembered the years she had spent feeling invisible, and now she realized that even small actions could make a difference. She had been given recognition, but she could also give it. She could help others step into the light, just as she had. Evan stood beside her, watching the interaction with quiet approval. "You've changed more than you know," he said softly. Lyra smiled, feeling the warmth of the words. "And so have you," she replied. "You showed me that being different is not a weakness. That choice is stronger than rules. That connection is stronger than fear." Together, they looked out over the plains, where the light of the twin suns met the shimmer of the bioluminescent plants. The world was still imperfect, still divided by old rules and expectations, but now there was hope. Change had begun quietly but surely, and Lyra had been at the center of it. In the years that followed, Lyra and Evan became more than partners. They became a symbol of a new kind of strength, one that valued heart, courage, and recognition above all else. Thyrans began to see that imperfection was not a flaw, but a variation, a unique strength that could contribute to the future. Lyra herself became a teacher, a guide, and a voice for those who had always been invisible. She helped others discover their own worth, not measured by glow or symmetry, but by the strength of their mind, the courage of their heart, and the choices they made. And through it all, Evan remained by her side. Not as a savior, not as a rescuer, but as a partner, someone who had seen her fully and completely, and chosen to walk with her into a future she had never imagined. One night, under the glow of the stars and the soft shimmer of the plains, Lyra whispered, "I never thought this could happen. That someone could truly see me." Evan took her hand, holding it gently. "I did," he said, "and I always will." That is the kind of strength that matters. Not perfection, not rules, but recognition, choice, and connection. Lyra smiled, feeling a deep peace she had never known. She had lived a lifetime in shadows, but now she stood in the light, fully seen, fully valued, and fully herself. The world of Thyra was still learning, still changing, but the first seeds of hope had been planted, and at the center of it all stood Lyra and Evan, hand in hand, showing that true strength is not measured by appearance but by heart, courage, and the willingness to see and choose one another. As the twin moons rose over the plains, casting their gentle glow, Lyra felt a quiet certainty. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer alone. She was not defined by imperfection, but by the choices she had made and the love and recognition she had received. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly free.